Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 41. Today we will continue working on the new town. More specifically, we will finalize the ramps leading up and down the plateau, something I wasn't really happy with before. That will take some time, since it's a time-consuming process, but once that's done, we will move on to roads, and begin laying down the first bridges and streets around the place. Apart from that big job, we will periodically check back on the original area, and fix small things, mostly when we need to wait for something, like when the earth-moving machines need to switch between outposts. First, we need to deal with this ramp I built in the last episode. I decided that it's unfit for purpose. I mean, it does the job, but it's way too ugly. Instead of building this big unseemly ramp, I think it would make more sense if we used a bridge instead. And for that, we need to lower the ramp back down to ground level. Since there is a lot of bedrock present on the ramp, we will need to use the yellow ghost image trick to make the job as quick as possible. The ramp itself is too tall to do it in one go, but if we start and end our constructions on the contour lines closer to the top, we can easily do this job in stages. Sadly, the excavators are out of gas at the moment, so let's find something else to do while they go and refuel. Well, we could get rid of the current passenger station, and build the one with 4 separate platforms. I think that one makes more sense. As I've said in the last episode, I always fail to plan for high capacity. Yeah, this will do nicely. We will get back to it later, but you get the idea. For now, we need to continue lowering this ramp. Maybe if we used roads instead of rails, the work would go faster, since roads are wider than the tracks. The first segment on the mountain highway is done. All 3 will be finished today, but I will be too distracted to start working on the other side. But that's fine, if one side is done, that's a big help already. We might as well start upgrading the next 2 segments in town too. We just need to be careful not to block access to the local shopping center, and we should be fine. The leveling stopped working, but none of the machines are thirsty. It seems we're out of range. Before we build another secondary outpost, let's take care of this mound of dirt and rock. We are getting tantalizingly close to the finish line. We will need to have a spot for the bridge to switch to regular tracks, so let's build out until that point. All 3 segments got built rather fast. Only 3 left on this whole street, so we might as well take care of them in one go. And one of the new apartment blocks is done. Let's check on the walkability. As far as I could tell, it should have everything it needs. But the biggest obstacle is the shopping capacity. Right now, it would be using the market that is already struggling to supply the locals. To ensure proper service, we need to wait for the new distribution center to finish. I also noticed that the traffic light has trouble letting enough vehicles through coming up from the lower part of town. Increasing the time it shows green should help with that. Since I would like to have another trumpet interchange for the town too, we will need to build a pair of overpasses, and that means we need to create 2 small hills on both sides. At this point, there is no delaying any longer. The machines are out of range, so we need to move them closer. And it seems everything we wanted to build is already done in the new hub. Only the train tracks remain, but I don't see any track layers around. Let's make sure they continue working. Alright, let's continue working on this ramp. This mound is unnecessary now, it's just a remnant of the old slope. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the new cliffs, so let's start working on the overpasses. We still need to include switches on this side, so we cannot go from bridge to bridge instantly. And this is what we've been working for all this episode. I think it was worth it. The incline is way too steep though. We can definitely do better than that. Now that's more like it. Also, lowering the tracks on the plateau itself will be perfect for creating bridges over the tracks, so we don't need to create elevated overpasses. Well, I suppose we need to make this ravine a bit wider, don't we? We could just use the tried and tested 4-lane leveling method. Yeah, it's already pretty much where we want it to be. But to bring in the two walls as close as possible, without creating ground clipping issues, we need to add some guardrails, which we are struggling with right now. The lower side is okay at least. The upper side can be placed on most of the length, but not at the very end. I think I'm okay with that limitation. With that done, let's turn our attention to the junction coming off the main line. First, we need the head of the trumpet, which should be easy enough. Wow, it's even more flat than I expected. I guess it helps if the main line is on an incline, I suppose. Now we just need the two arms on the other side. I was afraid of this. The amount of track we left over for these just isn't enough. And by trying to create a ramp, I just ended up creating an unseemly amount of ground clipping. It's best if we just make the section between the bridges a bit longer. Yeah, that should be enough. The first arm looks pretty good. Yeah, this will work perfectly for us. The only two conflict points are where tracks merge, but there's nothing we can do about that. Other than that, this is as free-flowing as possible. And it's also really flat. Just the way it should be. To complete the picture, let's give the ground a bit of a go-over with the smoothing tool, so it looks even more flush with the ground. Okay, since we deleted the guardrails, we have grass sticking through the tracks. Let's make sure we don't accidentally place any textures we don't want to be there permanently, and get rid of the unwelcome guests. And yes, I could have just rebuilt the tracks themselves. That would have been faster overall. Let's take care of the other two platforms on the station now. To be honest, I'm not sure if this is the final arrangement. I definitely don't want to create a two-way station with crossings, we know that's only asking for trouble. But we might be able to arrange the platforms themselves to be one-way, while the tracks outside are the usual two-way configuration. We just need to play around with the signals a bit, and that should get rid of the potential blocking issues we might encounter. And based on the density of the traffic, we could also play around with how many platforms are going which way. If we have more trains coming in from the east, we could dedicate 3 platforms for that direction. That would be kind of neat. Yep, just as I suspected, we are out of range of the outposts again. I can't be bothered to load up the machines again. Let's just send them over as they are. I think the only thing these housing blocks would struggle with is schooling. While university education isn't critical at this point, we cannot go without normal schooling. Maybe adding some extra footpaths will allow people to reach the local school. Let's go around the bushes, so we don't accidentally delete them. Only a couple got rooted up. I'm okay with that. Next, we might as well create a small walkway around in the back. It should be a good start for a small park later. And it seems the current traffic light timing is doing a decent job at managing the traffic now. Let's hope it continues doing so from now on. As always, if we don't give young adults a home quickly enough, the overall population will start to drop dramatically. Thankfully, in terms of a healthy workforce, we are okay. As long as we have some left to replace the older residents, we will be fine. It's just that when we create new housing, then suddenly a lot of people start having kids. And those kids grow up more or less at the same time, and get fed up with the lack of housing more or less in the same manner, resulting in a sudden mass emigration. But if we left things alone, I suspect things would level out eventually. At this point, I was pretty much ready to start setting up this distribution center, but as it turns out, there is no power in the most of the buildings. We need it for the freezer, so the meat don't go bad, and it wouldn't hurt to have some fuel in the distribution office either. That would make it easier to keep the deliveries going constantly. Good thing we have a transformer right next door. Since we're here, how about we fix the bushes? The buildings did mess up the dividers quite a bit. Let's not forget about the tracks. That should do it. As usual, we will need to wait for them to grow up to see the result. Hey, I just noticed that the map comes with some of these dividers by default. How nice. Must have been an unconscious influence somewhere along the way. There is a bit of clipping, but not too egregious. I think we will go over the river to continue going deeper into the Republic, but that's not really important right now. This is just a placeholder that will very likely change in the far future. Especially since the tracks are a bit up and down. Yeah, this is definitely a placeholder. At long last, we can get started on the roads. You know, since we have such a recessed tracks coming up to the plateau, we might as well do the same on the other side. Now we just need to make the ravine wider, so we can avoid the usual clipping issues. So it's that time again. Pretty happy with this. My first instinct was to use these arched bridges, but having multiple of them all along the ravine would wear out the novelty way too fast. So, paradoxically, we need to use something a bit more boring, I think. But before we place them, we need to make sure that the walls are as close to the tracks as possible, without spilling over. Oh boy, am I glad I started using these guardrails. Look at all the clipping. This time around, I did decide to just rebuild the whole track to get rid of the grass. Unfortunately, I did get rid of the guide segments at the end, so it won't be a perfect recreation. Close enough. So, let's start placing the bridges. As I've said, using something distinctive would just diminish the novelty of the more interesting looking bridges, so we should just go with something that stands out less. And using multiple kinds of bridge structures would be just a jumble. I think in this case, the bland looking flat bridges are the way to go. They are a bit too far along the rails, and we need more ways across the tracks. Since I would like to avoid using level crossings in the town, we will need to include at least 2 elevated overpasses. Okay, let's try to find a position that gives us 2 pillars. That'll do. Same on this side. I would really like to have 2 pillars on the bridge. Alright. Now we just need to hook it up to the ground level roads. For that, first we need to create a T-junction so all 3 possible directions can connect up to it comfortably. I guess we need to build these roads in stages, making sure we leave a node right in front of the bridge. Now we just need to create a nice looking ramp up to the bridge. Let's widen the ground at the start of the ramp, so it's more even. Same here. The ramp is really narrow at the top, so let's give it a bit of a help. Now that's what I call a nice looking ramp. Since we have more experience with creating them now, let's take care of the rest real quick. That's the western side of the central roads done. I think it would look better if the inner slopes were smoothed down, only leaving steep hillsides on the outer edges. I doubt we will build anything between the roads and the tracks. Maybe a substation or 2, but nothing bigger than that. Too bad my alarm clock was shouting at me to stop at this point. I really wanted to finish with the eastern side too, but I guess it will have to wait until next time. But the result looks kind of neat, I think. Yeah, this place is coming along rather nice. Those recessed rail tracks do give it quite a bit of character, not to mention all those bridges. I was tempted to build a tunnel at first, so that long curved bridge would go straight into one, and come out at ground level on top, but I think this one looks more interesting. Sure, it does cut down on the buildable area a bit, but we have a lot of that, so I'm not all that bothered. Plus we can just create more if necessary. I think it's safe to assume what the next episode will be about. Apart from working more on the town, We will also need to keep in mind that we need to take care of the construction infrastructure, so the new hub will also need to be finished. If I remember correctly, it only needs power, and a couple extra distribution offices for the fuel delivery network. As for the workers, the ones working in the concrete and asphalt plants will be brought in by train, but for the proper construction workforce might be a bit more tricky. We might need to use passenger helicopters for that. I will need to think about it, since Estergrad is way too far away for it. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, then leaving a like and subscribing to the channel just might motivate me to make more. If you are more in the donating mood, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description, where you can buy me a glass of water. I don't really drink coffee. Thank you for your support, and until next time, I will see you later.